Happiness is a universal pursuit, yet it often seems elusive in the face of life's challenges. For over 2 millennia, the teachings of the Buddha have provided insight into the nature of suffering and happiness, offering a path that leads to enduring inner peace. Buddhism, which revolves around self-awareness and mindfulness, presents happiness not as a fleeting emotional state but as a deeper sense of equanimity and freedom from suffering. The Dhammapada, one of the most revered collections of Buddha's sayings, opens with powerful verses addressing the duality of suffering and happiness. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him, as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows him, like a shadow that never leaves him. These verses encapsulate the essence of Buddhism's approach to happiness. Our mental state shapes our reality. Buddha's smile, frequently depicted in ancient texts and artwork, is a reflection of his inner equanimity, rather than an outward sign of material wealth or external achievement. The nature of suffering and happiness at the heart of Buddhism is the understanding of suffering, known as dukkha. The first noble truth of Buddhism acknowledges the existence of suffering in life, whether through birth, aging, death, separation from loved ones, or unmet desires. However, Buddha's teachings don't dwell on suffering but offer a path to transcend it. The key lies in understanding the nature of desire, or tanha, which often fuels our suffering. We constantly crave pleasure, comfort, recognition, or material possessions, believing that these will bring happiness. When we don't achieve these desires, we suffer. Buddhism teaches that true happiness does not come from satisfying desires but from releasing attachment to them. In the second noble truth, the Buddha explains that the origin of suffering lies in our attachment to things that are impermanent. The middle path Buddhism advocates for the middle path, which is a balanced way of living that avoids both extreme self-indulgence and harsh self-denial. In Buddha's own life, he explored both wealth and asceticism but realized neither extreme brought lasting happiness. Instead, he discovered that true contentment comes from living mindfully with awareness and compassion. The middle path is not only a moral or ethical guide but a means to align one's mind with reality. By understanding the impermanence of all things, we begin to let go of attachments and the craving that leads to suffering. This shift in perception is critical to cultivating lasting happiness. Mindfulness and meditation as tools for happiness. Mindfulness and meditation are at the core of Buddhist practice and essential for finding happiness. By practicing mindfulness, we become aware of the present moment without judgment. This awareness allows us to observe our thoughts, feelings, and desires without being swept away by them. Instead of seeking happiness from external sources, we turn inward to understand the true nature of our minds. Buddhist meditation techniques, such as vipassana, insight meditation, teach practitioners to observe the mind and body with deep attention. As we develop awareness of our thoughts and emotions, we learn to break free from reactive patterns of craving and aversion. This process leads to equanimity, a balanced state of mind that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. Equanimity doesn't mean indifference, but rather a profound inner calm that comes from understanding the impermanence and interconnectedness of life. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see that happiness is not dependent on external conditions but arises naturally when the mind is free from attachment and craving. Compassion as a path to happiness. Buddhism also emphasizes the importance of compassion, both for ourselves and others, in finding happiness. True happiness comes from cultivating loving kindness, or metta, towards all beings. The more we focus on the well-being of others, the less preoccupied we become with our own desires and suffering. This shift in focus helps us experience joy and fulfillment through altruism and kindness. Buddhist teachings on compassion encourage us to recognize the shared suffering of all beings and to respond with empathy. By cultivating a compassionate heart, we build a sense of connection and unity with others, which is essential for lasting happiness. Acts of generosity, loving kindness, and empathy not only benefit others but bring us a deep sense of contentment. Happiness is a state of being in Buddhism. Happiness is not seen as an emotion that comes and goes but as a state of being that arises from inner harmony. This happiness, often referred to as nirvana, is the cessation of suffering and the ultimate goal of the Buddhist path. Nirvana represents a state of profound peace, where the mind is free from the defilements of greed, hatred, and ignorance. While nirvana may seem like an abstract or distant goal, Buddhism teaches that we can experience moments of this deep happiness in our everyday lives. By practicing mindfulness, compassion, and non-attachment, we can begin to cultivate the seeds of inner peace and joy, even amidst the inevitable challenges of life. Buddha's contemporaries often described him as ever smiling, a reflection of the profound peace and joy he discovered through his awakening. His smile is not one of self-satisfaction or material success, but a sign of the deep inner freedom that comes from understanding the nature of reality. In our modern lives, the pursuit of happiness often leads us outward, to possessions, achievements, or fleeting pleasures. Buddhism invites us to turn inward, to cultivate mindfulness, compassion, and equanimity. By doing so, we can experience a more enduring and genuine form of happiness, one that is rooted in the present moment and independent of external conditions. True happiness, according to Buddhism, is not about avoiding suffering but transforming our relationship to it. By following the path of mindfulness, meditation, and compassion, we can discover the peace and contentment that come from within, just as the Buddha did more than 2,500 years ago. In the teachings of Buddhism, happiness is not the transient, momentary joy we often seek through external means. Instead, it is a state of profound inner peace, born out of understanding, mindfulness, and compassion. The Dhammapada, with its verses on thought, suffering, and happiness, invites us to reflect on how our mental states shape our reality. Buddha's ever-smiling visage, seen throughout centuries of artistic portrayals, symbolizes not the fleeting pleasures of the material world, but a deep-seated serenity that comes from within, a peace unaffected by external success or failure. Buddhism teaches us that the root of suffering lies in our attachments, our desire for things to be a certain way and our clinging to impermanent things in the hope that they will bring lasting joy. This insight is at the heart of the Four Noble Truths, which offer not only a diagnosis of human suffering but also a prescription for overcoming it. By letting go of attachment and practicing non-judgmental awareness, we cultivate the freedom to experience life as it is, rather than how we wish it to be. The middle path, as advocated by Buddha, serves as a practical guide to living in harmony with both ourselves and the world around us. It avoids the extremes of self-indulgence and self-denial, steering us toward balance and mindfulness in our daily actions. This path is neither one of excess nor deprivation but a steady, mindful way of life that promotes mental clarity, emotional stability, and a sense of fulfillment. One of the most powerful tools Buddhism offers for achieving this balance is meditation. Through regular mindfulness practice, we gain insight into the nature of our thoughts and emotions, learning to observe them without becoming entangled in them. Meditation helps us to quiet the restless mind, fostering equanimity or mental calmness, regardless of external circumstances. This inner calm forms the foundation of a happiness that endures, even amidst life's inevitable ups and downs. Buddhism also highlights the importance of compassion as an essential component of happiness. By turning our focus away from ourselves and toward the well-being of others, we experience the joy that comes from loving kindness and empathy. Acts of compassion not only improve the lives of those around us but also deepen our own sense of connectedness and fulfillment. In recognizing the shared suffering of all beings, we cultivate a heart full of compassion, leading us toward a more generous, loving, and peaceful life. At its core, Buddhism teaches that happiness is a state of being rather than a fleeting emotion. The ultimate happiness, nirvana, is a state of liberation from suffering, where the mind is free from the burdens of greed, hatred, and ignorance. While this state may seem distant, Buddhism offers practical steps for achieving moments of this deep peace in our everyday lives. Through the cultivation of mindfulness, compassion, and non-attachment, we begin to experience the seeds of nirvana here and now. In modern life, we are often distracted by the endless pursuit of material wealth, status, or pleasure. Yet, as Buddha's smile reminds us, true happiness is not found in these external things. It arises from within, from a mind that is free, a heart that is compassionate, and a spirit that is present. By turning our attention inward, practicing mindfulness, and letting go of attachments, we can experience the kind of happiness that Buddha discovered more than 2 millennia ago. A happiness rooted in understanding and acceptance of life's impermanence. In following the Buddhist path, we learn that happiness is not about avoiding suffering but transforming our relationship to it. The ups and downs of life will always be present, but how we perceive and respond to them defines our experience of happiness. By cultivating awareness, practicing compassion, and embracing the middle path, we move toward a state of inner peace and joy, just as the Buddha did. In this way, Buddhism offers not only a philosophy but a practical roadmap to enduring happiness, a happiness that transcends the temporary pleasures of life and touches something much deeper, a profound and lasting contentment.